Ever wondered if AI is just another buzzword in finance or it's quietly rewriting the rules of money as we know it? Hi, I'm Aida Haidar, and today I'm joined by Brett King to cut through the hype, dismantle the myths, and hear the warnings about how AI is reshaping our lives. Hi, Brett. It's very
Hello.
Nice to meet you. I'm so excited for our interview. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially how does it feel that your book was recommended by no other than Xi Jinping in 2018?
Yeah, that was a cool day. You know, I woke up, it was January 8th, 2018, I can still remember, and my phone was blowing up and my friends were all messaging me going, have you seen this? President Xi has your book on his bookshelf. So that's pretty cool. Actually, the story goes afterwards, we had communication with the protocol office for President Xi, and it turned out the central bank governor had given him a copy of my book, Augmented, Life in the Smart Lane, to read, and he was so impressed by the book that he bought copies for all of the cabinet to talk about smart cities and how this should be implemented in China. So I feel like I've had some input into the Chinese strategy.
One of the biggest AI
cool.
countries in the world right now.
So this is me. I'm a futurist, and you know, I do what I do to try and help the transition of the world into what comes next with these technological changes. I've been an author the last 15 years. I started as a technologist. Today I advise governments and central banks and banks around the world, and I have a bunch of companies of my own in AI and other areas as well, and I'm a content creator, and I run two world number one podcasts, one called The Futurists in Futurism and one called Breaking Banks in FinTech.
Just a very quick question before we start our official interview. What are you the most afraid of about AI and most excited?
So I'm not as afraid of AI as some other commentators in the market, but I'm afraid of the changes that AI will bring, and because of the gap between the emerging technology and our ability to respond. So the rate of change that AI and quantum and these technologies are going to produce, that's going to create shocks to the system. Because humans, we're not very good at adapting. We think linearly instead of exponentially, and this is where the greatest risk lies. But in terms of what I think about positive, think about the fact that compressed intelligence with AI or AGI leading to artificial superintelligence is going to give us a tool set to improve human life and advance the species in a way we could never do with conventional technologies or conventional wisdom. So the sky is the limit, but only if we're prepared to think about adaptation to these cycles in much quicker, more rapid timelines.
Well, I'm excited to talk about more.
Let's go talk.
Let's go talk, yes. Let's go inside.
Regulation and governance must become technology. Privacy of data will not survive the AI revolution. The world's most advanced economies in 20 and 30 years' time will be smart economies. So let's be clear, the intent of AI has always been to destroy human capital. The more automation you put in the system, the more likely it is that our system of capitalism will fail.
You said yesterday at the opening that AI is going to redefine financial services, and my question is, what kind of policy do you think policymakers and the governments need to think of now to make sure that central banks are aware of this AI disruption?
I think that's the key question is, you've got these exponential technologies in terms of their potential. I referred to Eric Schmidt's quote about non-human intelligence and the scaling laws. So we are seeing a tenfold increase in the capabilities of AI every 2 years right now. So this is faster than any technological curve that we've ever seen. So this means, you get this exponential growth in intelligence or technology, while policy sort of struggles to adapt at that same rate. So the biggest risk to humanity and to our financial systems is that gap between policy and technological possibility, because the technology can circumvent existing regulations and rules pretty quickly because we haven't adapted. Which ultimately means if you want to create policy that protects your markets and protects your citizens from the risks of AI, you must develop infrastructure, policy infrastructure that's based on AI as well. It's the only way you're going to be able to adapt. So when we talk about the central bank or the regulators in the market, the finance center here, we have to start thinking about this as technology infrastructure for the AI world, rather than the set of rules or policies or laws that we have on the books today. So really that's the key shift, that regulation and governance must become technology.
But do you have any particular rule or concept that, at least like one point of that big concept, that needs to be considered by the policymakers? I
mean, the key element that is at risk right now is what we call alignment, AI alignment. Is as we create this AI and artificial general intelligence, AGI, is it going to be aligned with human values and human systems? And this requires us to put a lot of forethought into how AI should operate. And the key issue is, how do we develop ethical constructs and frameworks for the safe operation of AI? And why that's very difficult is we can't agree on ethics as humans today. If you go to a market like the US, and you try to agree on ethical stances on healthcare, for example, you can't even get agreement amongst humans. So how are we going to create ethical frameworks for AI? This really means that if we look forward over the next 10 or 20 years, to have the safe operation of AI globally, we really need to come up with a global set of rules and standards for AI to align human values with the operation of AI.
Yeah, President talks about it a lot, and he actually said last year that he's going to invite different experts from around the world to design some set of rules, a framework for AI, not only in financial services, but also in government services, because we are very, very keen on, financial banking services, government services that we can do online. I know that for foreigners, when I speak to them, they always say, you guys don't afraid of just giving your personal information to your government. It's just very easy for you. Maybe we just don't second guess that, because we choose convenience over that kind of thinking of your privacy.
I mean, here's the thing, is if you want access to things like longevity treatments, which will start to become available over the next 5 to 10 years, to extend your lifespan, you're going to have to give up data to do that, right? If you want access to personalized financial services or an AI that can do personalized shopping for you, and like if you want to plan a trip somewhere and you want your AI to create the best trip for you possible, you're going to have to give up data. So this is one thing that privacy of data will not survive the AI revolution. But it means we have to shift to a different view of data, which is data ownership as a trade. So you will give your data in return for some sort of value exchange from these AI systems. But it does require digital identity and open data architecture for things like healthcare to be effective. If you don't want to share your data, then you're going to find yourself with very limited options in terms of operating in the autonomous world of the future. But coming back to your point about regulation and the central banks and so forth, one key point to understand here is that it won't be the job of central banks to regulate artificial intelligence, because AI is going to be infused in all parts of society. So the most advanced economies in respect to this, China, United Arab Emirates, have already really created AI regulation bodies, right? And this is what you need at a market to start to build these sort of safety mechanisms. It's not going to be the job of
the healthcare ministry to regulate AI in healthcare, or the banking sector to regulate AI there. We need general AI regulation across the economy.
That will be integrated into all different kind of
Correct.
ministries and institutions. You've mentioned this particularly financial center, Astana Financial Center here. What role do you see that kind of centers in building the next generation technical infrastructure for finance?
So first of all is investing in core technology infrastructure that's going to support next generation financial services. But the other piece is really the licensing requirements, you know. So in the past, when we've looked at licensing new entrants in the market, new banks and so forth, it's been very focused on the old view of the world, you know, capital adequacy requirements, risk mitigations, you know, policies and things like that, compliance and governance. But that all shifts to really technology licensing now. So the thing I'm looking for at places like AIFC and the central bank is, are they now focused on digital licensing to bring in digitally competent operators, and are they creating standards for technology architecture and compliance with traditional players so that they can migrate into that space? Because ultimately, those traditional banks with their banking core system in their own, you know, basement of the bank, this is not really going to work for what's coming next.
And about regulation again, I wanted to ask you, how can countries avoid the trap of creating regulations, thinking about AI, but still making them mostly for the yesterday's banking systems, like you've mentioned, in their basements, instead of preparing for tomorrow's AI-driven reality?
So regulators need to have strong technology capabilities from the top down. It would be nice to see that the next governor of the central bank is from who's led a technology department at a bank or something similar like this. Because
not an economist.
No, because the competency required to lead in this is largely technology first, right? And so this requires a different skill set. And we also need to start thinking about what level of investment is required in technology infrastructure. Can we take the existing supervisory capabilities and code that into AI agency? How do we get banks to interface with an AI agent that measures compliance and stress tests banks with AI versus the traditionally way of we've done that with, you know, physical reporting and you know, site visits and things like that. So that's the first part of the step. And then secondly, you know, I would just say, think about a regulator just as you'd think about an AI company like OpenAI today. That's the type of skills that you would need for the regulator to provide fit-for-purpose capabilities.
I'm not sure if we have that kind of people with that kind of set of skills.
We need to invest in it, right?
Yeah. Okay. I just like started thinking about it because I like that you said that, because I caught myself that I'm thinking more about this in terms of like economics, but not in terms of technological changes that will, you know,
I mean, this
happen.
is the thing, is if you aren't making these core technological changes, then you don't have the economic growth capacity that other economies might have. So the way I talked about it in the sessions over the last couple of days is that the world's most advanced economies in 20 and 30 years time will be smart economies. So we'll call them smart economies because it's an injection of autonomous operations and AI at the economy level for maximum operational efficiency and maximum scaling capability. Economies like the United States and those in the EU, many of them, are still industrial economies focused in resources and those types of things that were, built the economies in the Industrial Revolution. And that's where the gap is going to open up. And right now, it's fairly clear that the United States is not going to make this transition in time. So China is going to become the world's leading smart economy because of their infrastructure investment in autonomous capability. To illustrate, 80% of China's ports today are fully automated. The US just had a strike just before Biden finished his administration in November last year, where they banned the implementation of artificial intelligence in the shipping ports for the next 20 years. So the US cannot compete with China when it comes to autonomous supply chain. And that's going to create a massive gap in terms of economic growth moving forward.
But I thought that J.D. Vance, when he was, he was addressing Munich Security Conference, I think in February, he was actually advocating for AI in Europe. He was saying that we, as part of the Trump's administration, are willing to make AI like a cornerstone of our economic development. You guys, let's come on board, because Europe has its own different kind of regulations and laws in terms of privacy, in terms of open, I think, I forgot the name of the act, but still, it feels like Trump's administration is on board with AI.
Well,
no?
Yes and no, right?
Oh,
There's
that's
two
interesting.
types of AI that we're talking about here. Right now, the type of AI that J.D. Vance and the administration is talking about is a semantic, AI with the large language models, so ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, etc. And these are, this will be integrated into the consumer layer and to some extent agentic AI for operation at that level.
And maybe
but the industrial AI represents a far greater level of investment. We're talking autonomous factories, autonomous vehicles, next generation data centers, all of these things, which is sort of the core infrastructure. The US won't even be able to compete with China on data centers within the next couple of years because they don't have enough energy density, right? And so their grid is not evolving fast enough in the United States to support the growth of data centers they're going to need to lead in industrial AI. We measure data centers today, like, OpenAI is working with the UAE government to deploy a 5 gigawatt data center right now. We don't measure it by petabytes or the number of GPU processors anymore. We measure it in energy consumption. That's how we're measuring this. And the US has just banned, essentially the deployment of new renewable technologies like solar and wind. So, and at the same time, this year, China will deploy 300 gigawatts of solar energy. So there's no future right now based on current administrative policies where the US has any hope of leading on an infrastructure basis for industrial level AI. China has about 70 dark factories, autonomous factories today that operate without a single human on the factory floor. The US and Europe doesn't have one.
You know what's interesting to me? I was thinking about maybe Trump's administration is doing this to save jobs. Maybe like one of the points.
Yeah, I mean,
but for example, if we take China and you say without humans, without participation of human labor, so China has a lot of people that need work. Like we all need a job, to pay our bills. So I'm interested. What do you think?
I think this is the worst kept secret in AI today. All you have to do is listen to Sam Altman talk about him placing bets with Elon Musk and other players about the first single person unicorn, right? So this is a single person corporation valued at $1 billion that is run by one person with a set of AI technologies. This is, put out there by these players as what's possible with these technologies. So let's be clear, the intent of AI has always been to destroy human capital, because the most efficient form of a company is a humanless corporation. The most efficient form of a autonomous, a vehicle, like a transportation company like Uber or Grab, is where you have robot drivers, where you don't need human drivers. And we see a rush to this type of autonomous operation. So then you hear Elon and Zuckerberg and these players talk about universal basic income as the solution to this, that will tax the robots, will tax the algorithms in order to pay people a basic income for survival. But let's be clear, the intent of AI has always been to remove human labor and human capital from the workforce, because that's what's going to produce the most profits.
I picked up on your word, survival. So we're going to get money just to survive, not thrive, not, grow, elevate our, creative life, our professional life, our banking accounts. We all want to get more money than we are making now. So what do you think?
Now you're starting to understand the implications.
Your personal thought.
Here's my position on this, and there's many economists that will disagree with me on this, but my position is the more automation you put in the system, the more likely it is that our system of capitalism will fail. Because at the heart of capitalism, Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, supply and demand economics, is the concept that as demand for a product or service increases, you increase supply by putting more human capital into the workforce. And AI fundamentally breaks that part of the model of capitalism. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to go to socialism or communism, what next? It means that we need new economic thinking about what comes next. Otherwise, AI will produce this sort of techno-feudalist world where those that own the AI technologies accumulate all of this massive wealth and we're all left on basic income. Right?
Just to survive.
Yeah. And that's going to obviously be untenable or unsustainable from a political and economic perspective. So AI must produce a philosophical shift in terms of what the purpose of economy is. And climate change is a part of this as well, because we're really going to not be focused on economic growth in the 2040s like we are today. We're really going to be how do we use AI in these technologies like quantum and so forth, next generation energy technologies to raise the standard and quality of life for everybody so that the struggle of human existence disappears. And that's the promise of AI. But we have to go through that period of disruption where we see the collapse of capitalism and the concept of work as it exists today. So here's the really interesting piece, Aida. When I meet you in 15 or 20 years' time and I say, what do you do? Your answer is no longer about a job that puts food on the table or helps you survive. Now, because of all of these tools that we have, now your work is going to be what you're truly passionate about, what brings true meaning to the world instead of an economic unit of value.
I feel like I'm already doing what I love, what I enjoy the most, but do you think everyone will have a chance to do that in 15 years' time? That everyone you meet will be like, yes, I have a universal income, but at the same time, I'm painting, beautiful art pieces, and I'm so happy. Well, is it possible?
This is going to happen in some economies faster than others. The Nordic regions, China, economies surrounded in Asia around China, I think will probably transition to what you'd call a techno-optimist or techno-socialist state, where we're providing this large, this sort of ubiquitous standard of living. And don't forget, longevity is going to be in the mix here too.
Yes.
So we're going to have the potential of living to 130 or 150 years old, within the decade. And this requires completely different, thinking as well, because you could have 4 or 5 careers in your lifetime. You could be constantly retraining yourself. But then the question is, what would you do with these tools like AI and quantum computers? What does it allow you to do? And that's where the philosophy of humanity needs to shift from being focused on sort of economic value creation to how do we create real meaningful value for the species and advance the species scientifically and intellectually as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And we're going full futurist, right?
Yes. Now I'm thinking, like, when you were coming to Kazakhstan, I'm sure you've read a lot about Kazakhstan. You've researched the country.
Sure.
So, taking into account what we've just discussed, what would you recommend for the government of Kazakhstan? We're like, I always compare us to a very ambitious teenager.
Sure.
Very obnoxious, very self-confident. And we're saying like, digital services for government, done. Financial services, banking, done. Now we're doing the same with AI.
Yep.
Are we aware of all this?
This is a
dark
good point.
Side of it.
When I look at which economies are likely to make the transition, some of the first things I look for is: do you have digital identity infrastructure in place? Do you have an open data architecture for healthcare and banking? Do you have government services on the blockchain and these sorts of things. These are all the building blocks of being able to do this. But the second piece that Astana has is economically lots of resources that can play into this sort of next generation autonomous economy, and a very good economic profile, low debt to GDP ratio, which the G20 all suffer from issues there. So those fundamentals, I think, will all bear well. When I look today and people say, who are the economies most likely to make it through this disruptive period? I say, those who are looking at future-proofing themselves, those who embrace this future and are always constantly testing how to get from here to there. The US right now is pulling back from that future. Yes, they've got AI investment and so forth, but they're becoming more conservative and trying to rein in change, in the market. So they are very, again, they're unlikely to make this transition. But China, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Astana, these are economies that are not afraid of the future, are looking to embrace that and trying to figure out the transition from here to tomorrow. And that's what I look for as a sort of key policy differentiator today.
Well, let's hope that we're going to make this shift as less, with little pain as it will be possible for us.
I hope so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.